My name is Claire. I'm 31 years old, and everything I thought I knew about my family was a lie. When people ask me about my childhood, I tell them it was fine, not perfect, not terrible, just quiet. We lived in a two-story brick house in Massachusetts. My father was always at work, my mother was always in control, and I was the easy child, quiet, obedient, always watching. It wasn't until I turned 25 that I realized none of it was real, because the woman who raised me wasn't who she claimed to be. And the worst part? She made sure I'd never find out. Until I did. When I was 8, I started having dreams about a woman who looked like my mom, but wasn't. She would hold me, but her eyes were different, colder, strained. I asked my mom about it once. She laughed, said I had too much imagination. But little things started to bother me, like how we never had baby pictures of me, how I had no birth certificate in the house, how I looked nothing like my mom or dad, but apparently took after my aunt who passed. There was no aunt. Every time I asked questions, my mom changed the subject. Every single time. I was taught to obey, not question, to smile, to accept. So I did, until I couldn't. My mom's eyes were always tense. Every morning it felt like she put on a new mask. Some days she would hug me tightly and whisper, "You are everything to me." But the next day, it was like I didn't exist. My dad was even stranger. Even when he was in the room, his mind seemed miles away. Once, I caught my mom in the kitchen, hands trembling, burning a letter. She looked at me, dead in the eyes, and said just one word, "Forget." But I didn't forget. I never could. It happened on a cold Thursday night. I was 17. I'd come home early from a canceled choir practice. I opened the front door quietly. No reason, just instinct. I heard voices in the living room, low, intense. I wasn't supposed to be there. I hid behind the stairs and listened. My father, "If she ever finds out, it'll destroy her." My mother, almost in tears. "It was never supposed to go this far. I didn't want this." I froze. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would give me away. What didn't they want me to know? I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I asked Mom directly, "What were you talking about last night?" Her face went pale. She said, "You must have had a dream." I didn't dream it, and I never forgot it. That was the moment I knew. My family was hiding something from me, something big. After that night, I stopped trusting easily. I became quiet, watchful. Every conversation, every look, I studied it. I started writing everything down in a notebook, what people said, what they didn't. My father's business trips that didn't make sense. My mother's strange phone calls at night. I was still just a teenager, but I had the instincts of a detective. I even snuck into my parents' bedroom one afternoon, found an old metal box in the closet. Inside, letters. From someone named Claire. She wrote things like, "You promised me she'd never find out. We agreed. She wasn't supposed to exist." She? Me? That night I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. I knew two things. One, Claire was part of my story. Two, they had built my life on a lie. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't cry. I would plan, carefully, quietly, until they realized what I knew, and by then it would be too late. 2 years passed. I gathered every piece of the puzzle, receipts, dates, whispers, even a faded letter. One name kept coming up, Aunt Clara. I waited until Christmas Eve. Everyone was home, candles lit, fire crackling, the perfect time for false warmth and true revelation. I stood up. My hands were shaking, but my voice, calm. I know everything. Silence. My mother dropped her wine glass. My father? He just stared like he'd seen a ghost. I walked to the fireplace, opened my folder, and began reading. Every lie. Every betrayal. Aunt Clara tried to stop me. This isn't the time. No, it's the only time. My voice didn't break, but their facade did. In that moment, I wasn't their daughter. I was their reckoning. One rainy afternoon, I returned home to find the living room unusually quiet. My parents sat there, silent, frozen, like they'd seen a ghost. On the table, a single manila envelope, my name written on it. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside, court documents, signed confessions and a DNA test. I wasn't their daughter. I was someone else's shame, a consequence of a secret they buried 2 decades ago. The woman I called Mom couldn't even look at me. The man I called Dad whispered, "We did what we had to do." That's when I understood. I wasn't just betrayed, I was used, raised to protect their secret. And now I had the truth and a choice. They say secrets rot the soul. Maybe that's true. But silence? Silence taught me power. I spent years carrying the weight of their lies, and now they carry the fear of my truth. I never wanted revenge to destroy them. I just wanted them to know what they made me. This is not just my story. It's the story of every girl who grew up swallowing pain with a smile. Every woman who was told to stay quiet for the sake of family peace. If you see yourself in me, don't look away. Your silence is not your weakness. It's your weapon. Years passed. I lived my life, built my own family, and tried to forget. But one day, the same old voices returned, whispers in my head telling me to dig again, to uncover what I had buried so deep. And I did. Buried in an old box at the back of my mother's closet. I found it. A journal. Her journal. The truth spilled out in her words. She had known everything, all the secrets, all the lies. She let it all happen, and she wrote it down, thinking no one would ever find it. But I did. And now I finally understand. It wasn't just a betrayal. It was a choice. A legacy. One I'm ready to end. Quietly. I waited until the will was finalized, until the money changed hands, until the house, the company, the shares were legally mine. Then I dropped the letter, my letter, revealing every secret, every betrayal. Sent copies to the board, the press, his friends, his enemies. I watched his reputation collapse, not with a bang, but with a deafening silence. He begged, not for forgiveness, but for a second chance. But I smiled, because this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about balance, restoring what was taken. And I wasn't just his daughter anymore. I was his reckoning,